How common is weight gain during perimenopause?
Very. Now, the average woman's going to gain about 5 pounds. During perimenopause, up to 20% of us will gain 10 pounds or more. We're going to see an increase in insulin resistance. We're going to see an increase in inflammation, less microbiome diversity, more muscle loss and bone loss, and sleep issues. Like 60% of women in perimenopause and beyond are going to struggle with sleep. In our mid to late 30s, what women may experience is subtle shifts in PMS symptoms. Like maybe instead of 2 to 3 days of PMS symptoms, now it's 4 to 5 days. And women not feeling like themselves anymore. I would say that's like the classic symptom of perimenopause, where a woman's like, I don't have the same bandwidth. Things are requiring more effort from me. I don't feel like myself anymore.
Man, women have to contend with these huge tectonic shifts occurring at multiple points across the lifespan. I feel so lucky to be a guy.
I mean,
we don't have to deal with any of that.
It's a nice gift. I've done a lot of things over the last couple of years to protect my brain. But the everyday things, I would say, it's movement, eating an anti-inflammatory protocol, making sure I'm supplementing well, that I'm sleeping at all costs. Hormone replacement therapy is a big one for me as well. And regulating my nervous system. Those would be the big pillars I'm implementing to protect my brain. It's terrible to not get good sleep.
So what do we do to improve our sleep?
I think the first step is sleep.
Dr. Mariza Snyder, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to learn about all things perimenopause.
Yes.
My favorite episodes are the ones that are so far outside of my wheelhouse that just every moment is mind-blowing, because it's not something that I will ever go through, but I'm surrounded in my life by strong, powerful, independent women. And
I love that about you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've just always, I appreciate women. I am a mama's boy of sorts, and I want to do what I can to help shine a light, because I feel like women are under-discussed in the podcast sphere in general. They're understudied. And
true on both accounts, yeah.
This is such an important topic.
And that's why I'm so happy to get to be here today, to get to move the conversation forward.
Well, yeah. So I guess let's jump right in. What would you say is the biggest misconception that people have about perimenopause?
I would say there's 2 misconceptions. Number one is that it is a kind of a transition time of chaos. But then after you get into menopause, it all just gets better. But there's a lot of things that happen in perimenopause that don't necessarily set us up for success in menopause. The silent shifts, the creeping cholesterol numbers and blood sugar, insulin resistance, the creeping blood pressure numbers. And so a lot of this can happen, bone loss, muscle loss. That's happening in perimenopause. And so, yes, there are symptoms that may, only happen in this transition or be exacerbated in this transition. But often it's the silent shifts that I'm most concerned about that continue with us as we go into menopause. So I want to dispel that myth, that it's not just this temporary moment where things are a little wonky, that it can actually lead to future health outcomes over time.
Wow. And when does it usually strike?
I would say it's variable for every woman. If we reverse engineer natural menopause, we know that natural menopause is anywhere between 45 and 55 years old. And that average age is 51. And if perimenopause is 4 to 10 plus years leading into menopause, that means a woman who goes into menopause at 48, she could be experiencing symptoms as early as her mid to late 30s.
Wow. And it's silent, right? Like, how does a woman know if they're in perimenopause?
That's a great question, because there's no definitive test, right? There's no one day in time where perimenopause announces itself. Unlike, menopause, where we do know there's a day in time for a lot of women where we will not have a period for a full consecutive year. So it's a clinical diagnosis based on symptoms, based on age, and based on menstrual cycle changes. That's usually how we'll know. For some women, I had a patient just a couple weeks ago where she said, if I had talked to you 6 weeks ago, I would have told you not perimenopause, but now everything is shifting. And then I've had other patients where they've had subtle symptoms that have been brewing kind of behind the scenes. And then, years into it, they're like, oh my gosh, this whole time that was perimenopause.
Whoa. And so, give me an example of what those symptoms might look or feel like.
So let's go back to late reproductive years. So 35 is kind of officially where we enter those late reproductive years, and how we designate that is how many eggs we have in our ovaries. So we only have so many eggs left by the time we get to 35 years old, and that's when we talk about those geriatric pregnancies or those late reproductive pregnancies. And I was one of those. I had my son when I was 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so in our mid to late 30s, we know that due to the the decline in egg supply, there's going to be cycles where we're not always ovulating. And as a result, we're not going to have progesterone on the other side in the luteal phase of that cycle. And so what women may experience is subtle shifts in PMS symptoms. Like maybe instead of 2 to 3 days of PMS symptoms, now it's 4 to 5 days. They may notice a slight decline in their menstrual cycle in terms of days. Instead of 28 to 30 days, now it's 26 to 27 days. And then also what they'll notice is these subtle shifts in terms of low stress tolerance. Maybe sleep is changing, it's becoming a little bit more elusive, mood swings, irritability. That is the most common symptom of perimenopause. Workout recovery not being the same, and women not feeling like themselves anymore. I would say that's like the classic symptom of perimenopause, where a woman's like, I don't have the same bandwidth. Things are requiring more effort from me. I don't feel like myself anymore.
We really need to rebrand geriatric pregnancies.
Yes, we do. Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
What a term. Yeah, that's such an unfortunate way to refer to pregnancy post 35, because women are living longer now than ever before. Yeah, they're
living longer, and we're living. Well, many of us are trying to live more healthfully, and we are having children later. I always say that this generation, we're standing on the shoulders of our moms who worked so hard to allow us to have the education, allow us to, go into careers. Like my mom wouldn't necessarily have the career that I have today. She worked really hard for me to get to live this life. And because of that, we are able to extend when we want to start our families. And I think that's a beautiful thing if we're getting the support that we deserve.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. So what compelled you to write this book? Was it your own transition through that phase?
It was. Yes, and so I had the opportunity to get a front row seat to my mom's perimenopause journey when I was 30 years old. So my mom's just 18 years older than me. She's 65 today, and she is kicking butt and taking names. But at the time when I had just entered practice, and mind you, my entire practice was women in midlife. I was really working with women struggling with migraine symptoms, and a lot of women start to have migraines in perimenopause.
Interesting.
And that's a lot because I think that when we see fluctuating hormones, particularly these neuroendocrine hormones like estrogen and progesterone, we do see an increase of neuroinflammation. As a result, women will start experiencing migraines in perimenopause or other inflammatory issues. So I had a practice full of women with migraines in perimenopause and menopause. And what I noticed is that a lot of these women were being siloed into multiple specialties. They had a cardiologist, they had an endocrinologist, they had a psychiatrist, and no one was really connecting the dots between the fact that they were really going through this profound neuroendocrine transition called perimenopause. At that same time, my mom was in her late 40s, and she had been struggling. I remember growing up being told by my mom and my family members that women just suffer. And that was kind of what my mom was going through, and she was just writing it out, like just kind of suffering through her 40s until it got so severe that she wasn't able to function. I remember my mom feeling like she was a shell of her former self. Like this woman had always been kind of a freight train, strong, resilient, like nothing would take her down until late perimenopause. And when she finally asked me for help after being denied hormone replacement therapy, denied support, given SSRIs as a solution to the myriad of symptoms that she was dealing with, I began to realize that we were failing women at every turn. And I got the beautiful opportunity to take care of my mom, and I shifted the way that I was taking care of my patients in my practice. And I remember thinking two things. One, we've got to do better, and I want to be a part of that solution. But two, I hope I don't have the perimenopause my mom had. I remember thinking, like, what can I do to future-proof my perimenopause journey? Fast forward to 43 years old, about 3 years ago. I was a couple months out of postpartum. My son was 2, and I was feeling amazing. Like I had good energy, I had good stamina, endurance, my metabolic labs, everything looked good. And then it was like I fell off this perpetual cliff, and I had a lot of the same symptoms my mom was struggling with. And initially, I thought it was a thyroid issue. I thought it was burnout. I thought it was a lot of things. I didn't realize it was perimenopause, although when you look at it kind of like a 3,000 view up, it was clearly symptoms, age, all the things, it was adding up. And if I was struggling to figure out what I was going through, even after years of clinical practice, I knew so many women were looking for answers and not fully knowing if they were going through perimenopause. And that is why I wrote the book. I wanted women to know, like, is this perimenopause? And now that I know, what can I do about it?
Wow. What a story. And I relate so much to the care that you have for your mom. So important, such a powerful motivator. So is perimenopause, is it a diagnosis, or is it like a diagnosis by exclusion? You're just kind of ruling out all the other possible stuff that could, be contributing to dour mood, migraines, all of the other symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, technically it's not a diagnosis, right? It's a transition. It's one of the 3 major hormone transitions that women go through in their lifetime. And perimenopause, it's an inevitability if we get there or we don't go into premature menopause, like surgical menopause or, radiation-driven menopause or maybe ovarian insufficiency, something like that. So most of us will get there. But the 3 major hormone shifts are going to be puberty. So that's why we call perimenopause, second puberty, and then postpartum pregnancy. So those are the 3 major hormone shifts. And that's when the body is recalibrating due to the fact that hormones are wildly fluctuating. And so it isn't a diagnosis per se in terms of it's a disease state by any means, but because these hormones are erratically shifting and they are whole body hormones, there's over 40 different symptoms that women can experience during perimenopause.
Man, women have to contend with these huge tectonic shifts occurring at multiple points across the lifespan. I feel so lucky to be a guy.
I mean,
we don't have to deal with any of that.
It's a nice gift, right? And it's really because, I was listening to your episode with Dr. Kelly Casperson, who's a good friend and colleague, and talking about how we're the Ferrari. I just talked about the guys being the Hondas and women being the Ferraris. It's because we are 3D printing people. And so in order to do that requires a lot of complex, hormone regulation. Our metabolic health needs to be dialed, our immune system, our thyroid. There's so many moving parts to make sure that executes well at the onset of puberty all the way into, menopause.
Yeah. So what would you say is there a strategy then to prepare women to enter this transition in a more, I guess, in a way that their physiology is more resilient to the changes?
Yes, there is. I think the first step is tracking your cycle. Your menstrual cycle is a monthly report card, and we can gather so much information. It's an organ system that, again, is reliant on so many other systems to be working properly. But it can tell us so much about what's going on with our bodies. It's really hard to change what we're not measuring. So I always tell women from as early as your 30s, but even earlier than that, to be knowing your normals. What does your follicular phase look like? What does your luteal phase look like? Are you ovulating every single month? Like, that kind of information is really important. It can also help us to diagnose thyroid issues, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. There's a lot of data that we can gather from women even in their 20s and their 30s. And then I also recommend, having your biomarkers tested every single year at minimum, because now we have a timeline of your normals. It's hard when women go into perimenopause or into midlife and the reference ranges are so large and they get their labs ran because they don't feel good, something isn't right, they don't know what it is, but labs dictate that they're normal when it's nothing but normal. But if we have that data on you leading into perimenopause, we can know if your blood sugar is creeping up. I mean, obviously we know what prediabetes looks like, what insulin resistance looks like, but what is a normal for you? That's going to be important. I also believe that just tracking your symptoms along with your cycle is important. So in your early to mid 30s, is there anything that we should be picking up on? Do you notice there are more sleep issues in the late luteal phase of your cycle? Or, are you struggling with mood issues? Is that exacerbating over time? And I say when we look at this data in a meaningful way and we know ourselves, not only can we advocate better for ourselves, but also we can know when things are shifting. So that because it's easy for us to gaslight ourselves too,
Yeah. What do you think about like trackers? I
love trackers.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are your favorites?
I have my Whoop on right now. I love
cool.
wearing a continuous glucose monitor. And I love that type of data. Again, growing up, I was told to just push through at, no matter what cost. Like if you're having a bad day, you don't feel good, you just keep going, you keep handling your to-do list. So I didn't really learn to listen to my body until I was much older. But the data I think it's important that we learn to listen to our bodies, but data can really tell us maybe when we're not listening or we're running through life. So a lot of women, especially as they enter perimenopause, if they're not tracking their menstrual cycle, they may not notice that their cycle went from 29 days to 25 days because it's all just a blur. Like everyone's just trying to do the best they can with what they've got and take care of the people and the things that they've got going on. And so I love looking at heart rate variability for stress resilience. I like looking at resting heart rate, obviously blood glucose as a proxy measure for cellular energy and mitochondrial function. I think a lot of that data can really steer real-time decisions about how to take care of yourself and how to future-proof your health.
Yeah. The Aura Ring, I have no affiliation with the Aura Ring, but I know that integrates with natural cycles.
Yeah, and I love that technology. Yeah, that you don't even have to measure your basal temperature yourself. You can just wear the Aura Ring.
It's also a great form of contraceptive.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's like 97%
Crazy.
accurate. It's not FDA approved, but it's almost as accurate as taking hormonal birth control in terms of keeping you from getting pregnant. I love natural cycles.
Yeah, it's a dope app. So, yeah, tracking I think it's super important because as you said, like what you can measure, you can thus manage.
Mm-hmm.
And
in real time. Like I can wake up, like I woke up this morning, I was looking at my sleep score, my HRV, my resting heart rate. Like that's going to dictate the type of workout I'm going to do today, how hard I can push. Like that gives me real-time information that I can take to the bank and that I can make measurable changes with.
How common is weight gain during perimenopause?
Very. The average woman's going to gain about 5 pounds during perimenopause. Up to 20% of us will gain 10 pounds or more. And so with declining estrogen or declining hormones as a whole, we're going to see an increase in insulin resistance. We're going to see an increase in inflammation, less microbiome diversity, more muscle loss and bone loss, and sleep issues. Like 60% of women in perimenopause and beyond are going to struggle with sleep. And all of that adds up to women, unfortunately, putting on some weight. And then body composition changes happen as well.
Is it necessarily that women in perimenopause tend to gain weight, or that the fat that they're already holding redistributes itself?
It's a yes and. So yes, there's redistribution of fat from the hips, butt, and thighs as estrogen is declining, and then it goes to that visceral belly fat, which in its own right is its own kind of dangerous situation where we start to see a spiral of more insulin resistance, and then also a perpetuation of even more visceral belly fat. But then also, with muscle loss, we see a decrease in basal metabolic rate. So it all is adding up. I always say that nothing's operating in a silo in the body. If you're not sleeping well and estrogen is dropping and you are stressed to the nines and you're prioritizing everyone but yourself, like most likely you're going to see a level of weight gain.
So how do my ladies out there prevent that?
Exactly, that's a great question.
If they want to,
yeah,
assuming they do.
Yes, well, I think a lot of us I think we're coming from the standpoint of I want to be resilient. I want to feel strong. I want to show up for my family and the people that matter to me. And I want to feel good in my body. I also think women are raising or taking care of their moms and people in their lives that they're seeing really struggle in their later years. And they want to prevent that as well. And we know that, obesity, insulin resistance, prediabetes, all of that lends to all-cause mortality down the road. The first thing I tell women is to start balancing your blood sugar. I think that's a great place to start because there's a lot of easy ways that we can implement that. One of the best ways that we can do that is just moving after meals. I want to win for all of my women, all of my patients, and a lot of my patients are living a relatively sedentary lifestyle. They're taking care of a lot of family members. They have a big workload, and they're just getting by. But they also are taking care of a mom who potentially has dementia, or she's had a stroke and cardiovascular disease, and she's starting to notice a little bit of cognitive decline herself because she's in perimenopause and her brain just doesn't feel the same way. And she's trying to figure out, well, what can I do to mitigate that? And so I always say balancing blood sugar, it's going to support your brain, it's going to support your energy levels, and it's also going to support you maintaining a healthy weight and a healthy metabolism.
Well, you said it's so true about caregiving that women tend to bear the brunt of caregiving in the family. I grew up in a house of all boys, so there were no girls. So I took care of my mom who had developed dementia at a relatively young age. But I can imagine that in families where there's, boys and girls, that girls would, be more inclined to step into that caregiving role, which can be incredibly stressful and can have negative health consequences unto themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Even, and it may not even be your parents. I have a sister who's younger than me, who's just had a lot of struggles in her life and had a stroke a couple of years ago. And I've stepped in to help manage that and take care. But my mom's the primary caretaker for my sister and also her mother, my grandmother. And so it's a lot of burden on women and that caregiver burden, yeah, it wears down on you. It's wear and tear over time that really erodes our resilience.
Do you think that the weight gain that tends to happen, is it a function of, like, is it a hormonal problem? Is it a metabolic problem? Or is it, a function of what all humans tend to experience as they get older? They just become more, as you alluded to, more sedentary. Maybe they become less focused on, diet and fitness as they might have focused on when they were younger.
I think initially it's a metabolic issue. What is it? 1 in 4 of our children are diabetic and 1 in 3 are pre-diabetic.
Yeah, and like 20% are obese today.
1 in 5 of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and about 80% of those cases are driven with insulin resistance. And so we think about, by the time we get to midlife, our 40s, perimenopause, it's usually when women come to me, 42, 43 is where women are like, I don't feel like myself anymore. But we have lived a life. And most likely, we grew up on some level of ultra-processed foods, sugary drinks, and there's some level of metabolic dysfunction going on there. By the time a woman is 45 years old, she is more likely than a man to be overweight or obese. And we also know that usually by the time women are 45, they've got at least one biomarker of metabolic dysfunction, whether that's creeping blood glucose or that's triglycerides above 150 milligrams per deciliter, or even blood pressure that's over 80 over 130. And so then they get into perimenopause and they've probably been keeping it pretty stable, like where it's not really showing up. And then hormones begin to decline. And it's like that protective shield falters. And it all just starts to fall apart from there. So that's where we start to see a more aggregation of that belly fat. We start to see more creeping lipids, more creeping blood sugar, more insulin resistance, and as a kind of a side effect of that, more weight gain.
So what are the dietary and lifestyle strategies then to counteract those changes?
Well, I talk about in the book, I have like 7 pillars. And the first pillar is really understanding blood glucose. I always recommend wearing a continuous glucose monitor for even 2 weeks. Just see what happens, when you're living your daily life for a week, and then start making some modifications to see if you can create more stable glucose variability throughout the day. But then I talk about building a metabolically healthy plate. How I want everyone to be thinking about what they're eating is, how am I fueling my future brain? That's how I want us to be thinking about it. I think that's one of the biggest things that people are scared of is dementia, is cognitive decline, and also cancer. I know cardiovascular disease, I think it's 1 in 2 women in all developing countries will die of a mostly preventable heart attack or stroke. But I think the things that we're most feared are dementia and cancer. And so when we're thinking about building that metabolically healthy plate, first and foremost, I think it's important that we're focusing on a plethora of fruits and vegetables. So a lot of fiber, a lot of probiotic-rich foods, prebiotic-rich foods, focusing on protein and healthy fats, particularly omega fats. And so I talk about in the book how we can actually start to build those plates from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so if we can focus on eliminating the ultra-processed foods and just starting to bring in some of these metabolically healthy components of a healthy plate, we begin to shift the way that our brain functions, the way that our body feels. We support and protect our metabolic health, and we're future-proofing our health. So that's a big component of the book.
As a clinician, what do you see as being the biggest mistakes that women tend to make from a dietary standpoint?
I would say calorie restricting. Like extra calorie restricting is a big one, not enough fiber. And I know that we're in a big protein push right now. I feel like we're eating...
Guilty as charged.
As am I.
But I think it's super valuable.
No, I absolutely do. We're going to find that middle ground between everything, But yeah, I feel like eating protein is a part-time job for me and my family at this point, But making sure that we have fiber on the plate, I think, is going to be equally important. So fiber, protein, healthy fats.
Clinically, do you see a benefit though of increasing protein intake in your patients?
Yeah, they've got more energy, they've got more cognitive function, more stamina, more resilience. They're able to lay down muscle much easier. So yeah, I see it significant. They're eating eating less ancillary carbs, less refined carbs, I mean, you feel fuller longer. It's a win. So I always say, if you're going to focus on protein, bookend your day with protein, like breakfast and dinner. And then you kind of make up the rest during the day.
Such important advice. What about from a lifestyle standpoint when it comes to exercise?
I think we should be moving like our lives depend on it. So I talk about in the book how that we should be building our life around movement, not building movement around our life. And whether that is walking after meals, that is, doing a Pilates class or, strength training, whatever that is, but more so being physically active. So more neat movement, more exercise snacks, more moving. Even if it's walking up and down your stairs after dinner, it's doing some jump squats while you're watching TV, just building as much movement into your day as possible. In an ideal scenario, I'd love someone to be in the gym lifting weights a couple times a week. I'd love them walking after meals, clocking somewhere between 7,000 and 11,000 steps per day, and then doing movement that feels good to them. I do love exercise snacks. I love,
What are those?
So those are basically 1 to 5 minutes of mini bursts of movement. It's like mini HIIT workouts. So think jump squats, mountain climbers, burpees, jack squats, push-ups, going up and down your stairs with weights. Anything that's going to rev up your heart and then get back to doing what you're doing. And the beautiful thing about mini HIIT workouts is it's not going to burn you out, but it's going to give you more mental clarity. It's going to help you sleep better. It's going to help you burn off that excess sugar. And what I see with my patients is it begins to normalize their metabolic labs, which is really exciting. And it's not a big commitment in time.
Yeah. I mean, snacking seems like a pretty low lift.
It's a very low lift. Before I came in, I was doing some jump squats
You were?
at my car. Yeah, I usually do 60 jump squats before any interview.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you also have a resistance training routine?
I do. I typically train I have 4 to 5 days a week. I do upper body training, lower body training. It's not like a very tight, I'm not tracking everything, but I'm usually focusing on progressive overload over time. But I try to be in the gym about 30 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week.
How do you strike a balance? Because I feel like there is a lot of, along with the perfectionist mindset that sometimes encouraged on social media today in the wellness space, which I think can be actually quite counterproductive to health. There's the phenomena of exercise addiction, orthorexia, and the like. So how do you balance, all of these activities, these behaviors that we know are so beneficial in terms of long-term health outcomes with the fact that some people tend to
overdo?
Yeah.
That is a great question. And I think, there's a lot of women in perimenopause that are trying to overdo or overcompensate for the changes that are happening in their bodies that can lead to burnout as well. I think it's really about a mindset shift. What is the goal? What are you looking to accomplish? As we navigate perimenopause, I always want women to know that you're not broken. You're just going through a profound hormone shift. And it's an upgrade in a lot of ways as we step into the most powerful chapter of our lives. And so I think it's around that mindset of how are we strong? How are we resilient? How are we supporting the freedom to do the things that we want in our 60s, 70s, and beyond? And if you're feeling like it's burning you out, you're not able to do the things that you need to do on the back end of that workout, it's worth renegotiating, what's your energy worth?
I also find that many people probably overdo the volume in the gym and aren't fueling themselves properly. I mean, you kind of alluded to that, under eating.
Under eating, calorie restriction, not enough protein, not enough calories in general. But often I find that it's diminishing returns. You're just ultimately, it's going to come and get you. Like you're going to feel it due to a total burnout, not enough energy or capacity, mood issues, sleep issues. I mean, the body is it's going to wear and tear over time. I think we feel the consequences of that.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you've mentioned CGMs, which I've actually I've worn a CGM for a couple of weeks. I mean, I found it to be really interesting, but then one of the counterintuitive data points that emerged from that little experiment was what critics of using CGMs in normal glycemic populations always flag, and that's that, otherwise healthy things, healthy foods, healthy activities can cause the dreaded blood sugar spike.
Yeah, like overtraining, like training,
or like even sitting in a sauna, and that might lead one to believe, without proper education that those activities are somehow harmful because it's causing an elevation of blood sugar, or that eating a handful of blueberries on an empty stomach, is somehow unhealthy because
I love blueberries.
Yeah, me too. But some, without proper context,
education,
somebody wearing like a CGM, somebody who otherwise has a healthy blood sugar regulation might look at the data that comes from that and say, oh no, I shouldn't be eating, blueberries on an empty stomach or sitting in a sauna or whatever.
I think we could say that about an Oura ring or a Whoop strap as well, with heart rate variability or resting heart rate or sleep scores, that we can overanalyze that information. But I think that type of data can be really helpful. A lot of the patients that I put continuous glucose monitors on are often, at the cusp of prediabetes, and they're just not. They didn't realize that the fruit punch in their water bottle was driving major blood sugar spikes. So they didn't realize that, not moving after meals, like how beneficial that could be. And so there's always going to be kind of a give and take, especially if we don't have the information and the education around devices like that. But I've seen it have such powerful benefits for women learning. They thought that the Yoplait yogurt that they were having with a lot of extra sugar and granola and crunchies was good for them, and then find out that when they have that for breakfast without a decent amount of protein, it is spiking their blood glucose. Or that sugar smoothie that they were consuming that they thought was really good for them, that it was really driving up a blood glucose response that they never really recovered from. So I think it can be really helpful, but you're right, education is always necessary and needed.
Yeah, and it also helps people, I guess, learn to identify patterns and responses to certain foods beyond just what the graph says. But if a blood sugar spike then an hour later is leaving you feeling really hungry, that might
indicate that, ideally let's pair that with some protein or some healthy fats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. Yeah, grapes on their own, if I eat grapes naked, I'm going to see a big blood sugar spike. But if I pair grapes with some cheese or a little protein, all good.
Should always eat.
I think we should always
have your clothing on.
Yeah, exactly. Have our clothing on. Our protein and fat clothing. Yeah, that's how I pack lunches for my 4-year-old. I'm always pairing. I make sure he's got enough protein, enough fiber, enough healthy fats, a really well-rounded meal that's supporting his cellular energy. And I think when we come from that standpoint of how can I support my cellular energy, that's how we can really build that plate to really support ourselves. And having that type of data that can show us probably need a little bit more protein here, I think can be really helpful.
Yeah, so true. When it comes to sleep, that can change for women too, right? During this transition, they start to, women who have been sleeping perfectly for the entirety of their lives suddenly will start to experience sleep problems.
Yeah, so in midlife, perimenopause and menopause, up to 66% of women are going to struggle with some level of sleep issues.
Wow.
And in perimenopause, it can be really inconsistent. Parts of your month, you're fine. Other parts of your month, you're not. And I think that's why perimenopause is such a moving target, because symptoms are good one week and then they're wonky the next. But yeah, with the decline of progesterone and other hormones like melatonin, we are going to see sleep disruption, whether it's getting to sleep because your brain is racing a mile a minute as you're going to bed with all the things that you didn't accomplish that day, or waking up in the middle of the night, say 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and trying to get back to sleep. And so, I have a couple strategies that I can share with you, but it's an area that we definitely need to focus on for women, because sleep, again, can lead to all-cause mortality or premature aging. It's terrible to not get good sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I feel awful the next day if I don't get good sleep. I always say sleep will make or break me.
No, it's crucially important. So what do we do to improve our sleep?
I think the first step is sleep consistency. So it's lifestyle strategies. Dr. Kristen Holmes is a good friend of mine. We've talked about sleep consistency over the years. Gone are the days where, I don't know about you, but I can't just race into bed anymore and fall asleep. And the more consistent I am with optimizing my circadian rhythm, particularly around when I go to bed and when I wake up, that makes a huge difference. I think a lot of us feel like we still have wiggle room, or we have that social jet lag where we're consistent during the weekday, but then on the weekends, we just kind of, we mess around and find out.
Exactly.
And that messes with us. And especially if people are traveling, that can mess with your circadian rhythm as well. And so I always say reverse engineer, when you want to get up in the morning. So let's say it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And then, the 8 hours or 9 hours, whatever that needs to be for you, that's when you start that, you reverse engineer your routine. I always tell people, give yourself 45 minutes to an hour to really settle the nervous system and kind of prime the body for sleep. So whether that is taking your supplements about an hour before, or drinking your sleepy tea, or taking your oral micronized progesterone, like have that stack ready about an hour before, and then start winding down the night. For some people, it's breath work. For some people, we need to dump everything on paper, like just get that list so you can move it out of your brain onto a piece of paper. Reading a book before bed, having the lights dim, making sure it's cool enough. Hot flashes and night sweats are a real occurrence for women in perimenopause and menopause. And so making sure that you're set up for success there, but just be consistent. I think that's going to be the number one thing that I recommend. And if that isn't doing enough for you, if that isn't working well enough, then bringing in natural sleep, solutions, things like magnesium and L-theanine, valerian root, again, a tea, or again, I'm a big fan of oral micronized progesterone for just kind of calming the mind and helping to get more deep, restful sleep for women in perimenopause.
Is there a specific type of magnesium that you recommend?
I love magnesium threonate. I love magnesium biglycinate. I love magnesium malate. I think there's multiple magnesiums and you can take. I personally take magnesium glycinate because glycine is really calming on the nervous system. I love that. I also think, GABA can be really helpful, like a pharma GABA, to help kind of calm the nervous system. So figure out what works for you. I've talked to so many patients over the years and so many friends and colleagues, and everyone's got their own kind of secret way or like their strategy for getting to sleep. But I would say give it the time and attention that it deserves, because it really does deserve it. I talk to my friends and my patients. I always say, treat your sleep routine like it's $1 million meeting. I think sometimes we are prioritizing those emails or that Netflix show or that crucial conversation at a time where we really just need to be focusing on gearing up to get a decent night's sleep.
Totally. Do women have in perimenopause hot flashes, or is that strictly a menopause?
No, it's a perimenopause.
It is? Hot flashes?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
It's declining estrogen. And so I have patients that start to have hot flashes in their early 40s, not just late 40s into their 50s. And so it just really depends on what's going on with their hormone profile. Sometimes estrogen is declining earlier than we would expect. And so for those women, hot flashes and night sweats are very common. Even women in postpartum, I've had patients, especially in their 30s and 40s in postpartum, with that decline in estrogen, having hot flashes and night sweats.
Wow.
And I mean, gosh, you're like, and more things to have to deal with and contend with. I'm just trying to keep this baby alive.
No, yeah, it's crazy. I have long slept hot, which made it very uncomfortable for me when, if I hadn't been able to turn the AC down like super low. But then I got a mattress cooler. Do you find that
those are really helpful.
Unfortunately, they're super expensive.
They're expensive.
We need a better, option there. Because I feel like there's only just like, a handful of brands on the market, and they all tend to price gouge, unfortunately. But for me, I found that they're very effective in terms of improving my quality of sleep, because I otherwise I'll wake up in the middle of the night sweaty.
Yeah, no, I recommend, they are expensive, but when you are not sleeping well, often my patients will do anything to get good sleep. I
wonder if there are low-cost alternatives. Like, there's all these cooling materials now on the market.
Yeah, there's like, there's a pajama brand that I love. I think it's Piper and Mint that make these really cool wicking pajamas that are organic, they're out of LA. I always recommend women keep ice water by the bed, a little peppermint spray to spray them down. Those are really cheap and very affordable, like just easy things to have at your bedside to cool you down. Also have different, like if you and your partner are sleeping together and they're heating you up or warming you up, separate the sheets, or in drastic measures. Sleep divorce.
Sleep divorce.
Yeah, I'm sleep divorced.
Are you?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
First of all, for people who've never heard the term, what is a sleep divorce?
That means you and your partner sleep in separate rooms. That's what sleep divorce. Or you definitely don't sleep in the same bed.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 beds in the same room? Is that happening?
Yeah, definitely 2 beds in the same room is happening.
Wow.
But separate rooms. So I had back-to-back concussions back in 2023, in the summer of 23, and my spiraled into post-concussion syndrome. At the time, I was still breastfeeding my son. We were co-sleeping, but it was a hard stop. Like I had to go into a 90-day intense protocol to save my brain. And I didn't want my son, he was not ready to he's still co-sleeping today. He's almost 5 next week. So my husband agreed to co-sleep with my son in my son's room. He has a queen bed in there. And we've just maintained that ever since.
How do you get two concurrent concussions? Like what were you doing?
Being a mom.
Wow.
I box jumped into a metal bar because I had a hat on. I didn't know. It was at a playground with like high velocity.
Oh my God.
So that was number one. And almost fell down. I was climbing up a ladder to get to my son. I didn't know it was up there, the metal bar. They don't really make playgrounds like that anymore. Growing up, all of our playgrounds were metal. Yeah. Now they're plastic.
It's a miracle that any of us survived. Actually,
I really, to be honest. Like, and then a couple weeks, about 10 days later, I was playing with my son in the living room, and he fell back, and he broke my nose.
Whoa.
And so, and I kind of spiraled from there.
Damn. Well, I'm so happy that you're okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
What about for people who are concerned that a sleep divorce might negatively impact the relationship, intimacy, etc.? Like I'm sure people are wondering.
No, I mean it can. I mean, I think you got to really, when I think about perimenopause as a whole, it's important for us to have compassionate communication, right? And figure out what works for both you and your partner. And if you are going to explore sleep divorce, I mean, I think there needs to be some parameters and conditions and understandings and just a compassionate conversation. I have a lot of friends that are sleep divorced and are trying to find their way back to their partners. But again, sleep is imperative for them to function, not only
super
as
important.
moms.
You got to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Exactly. And so these are women who are taking care of households, they're taking care of family, taking care of partners, taking care of their work, their work demands, career demands. I mean, it's, I think partners really are understanding.
You're going to be better at all of the above if you're sleeping well.
Yes. I mean, it's the benchmark. I would say movement and sleep and hormone replacement therapy. Those would be the three things.
I'm such a big fan of the notion of a sleep divorce.
Yeah,
because
I love it. Yeah. I have a king size bed.
All to yourself?
All to myself.
Wow.
And once the door's shut to my room, to Mama's room, it's over. Like, don't come in.
Lights out. That's awesome.
You can't grab your underwear. You can't.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, kudos to you for planting the flag so strongly and having such conviction there, because it is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I've had a couple health challenges in my life, but nothing as severe as those back-to-back concussions. And there was a minute there where I didn't think I was going to recover. And I've had so many patients over the years who've had TBIs and who've had severe brain issues. And I understood. Like, it's like your whole world falls apart. And if you are the kind of the spoke on the wheel, like holding it all together, it's you're not getting enough sleep. Your brain feels scrambled. It's so hard to take care of everyone around you. And so that was kind of the line in the sand that I drew, was like, what am I willing to do to protect my brain moving forward? And that was 3 years ago.
Did you experiment with creatine? Do you take creatine?
Oh, I take creatine. Oh, yeah. I do so many things for my brain every day.
What do you do?
I take creatine for my brain. I do a lot of hyperbaric oxygen, meditate. I have a big supplement stack that I take every day. Sleep, a big one. Movement, and a lot of stress regulating strategies. And then I also go and do I go and do sensory work at a neuro center down the street. So I've done a lot of things over the last couple of years to protect my brain. But the everyday things I would say is movement, eating an anti-inflammatory protocol, making sure I'm supplementing well, that I'm sleeping at all cost. I track that. Hormone replacement therapy is a big one for me as well. And regulating my nervous system. Those would be the big pillars I'm implementing to protect my brain.
What about for women who are afraid of creatine? A lot of people are talking about creatine today because of the burgeoning body of research linking it to better cognitive health, better mental health,
better sleep.
I haven't
better
seen
recovery.
Yeah, like cognitive function when sleep deprived.
Especially jet lag. Mm-hmm. There's burgeoning research on that in particular, like recovery from jet lag, recovering from social jet lag. Creatine is amazing. I say try it. Give it a try. Experiment for 30 days. See how you do, and go from there. It's the same thing I talk about with hormone replacement therapy. There's still a lot of fear in the zeitgeist about HRT. And I'm like, hey, you're struggling, you're suffering, you've got all these symptoms. You can always try it out for a few months or 90 days, see how it goes for you, tailor it, change it. And if it's working for you, yes. If it's not, you can always come off of HRT.
Yeah. Well, what is your overarching view of HRT? Because we've had a lot of conversations about it of late on the podcast, and the general tenor seems to be a positive one. That
It's very positive.
Yeah.
I think it's cardioprotective, it's bone protective. 1 in 3 women are going to have an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime, and we have a solution for that can really significantly prevent that. It prevents general urinary symptoms of menopause. It is, metabolically protective. I mean, it's just a win across the board. It's great for sleep. It's great for mood. For me, the reason why I use it is my brain. It has been so neuroprotective for me and my brain so that I can do the work, so I can have this conversation with you. Like, I took my oral micronized progesterone last night. I put my patch on 2 days ago.
Hey, you're on fire. Is it, are you doing, it's PET it's sometimes referred to, right?
Yeah, I think we're moving in that direction of
progesterone,
PET,
estrogen, testosterone. Yeah.
Exactly. But most people are still calling it HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
Now,
I just go with what, what the general population calls it.
Do you take all three?
I do take all three. Mm-hmm.
Is it like compounded, or walk me through how this works?
Well, the testosterone is compounded.
Okay.
So I take so I recommend oral micronized progesterone. That's Permetrium, and it's very inexpensive, very easy to get your hands on. I mean, as long as you have a doctor who's willing to prescribe it, and we're moving more in that direction. I think doctors are beginning to realize that progesterone is very neuroprotective. It is sleep beneficial. It supports mood, stress tolerance, just helps women navigate life a lot better. But I mean, just the sleep piece alone, it's a game changer. But we know that progesterone, is allopregnenolone in the brain, and that activates GABA A receptors to just calm the mind. And what woman doesn't need a little bit of calming in her life, especially before bed? So love that. And it's, again, easy to get a hold of, FDA approved, very safe and efficacious. Then you've got estradiol, which again now is mostly bioidentical. There are still synthetic estrogen on the market, but even the average estrogen patch, which is what's typically being prescribed, all it comes in gels and creams and all the things, is also, again, over the counter, FDA approved, very easy. As you know, testosterone for women is not FDA approved, and so it's compounded. And often recommended off-label for cognitive function, for motivation, for confidence, for increasing libido, for muscle recovery, it's a build-you-up hormone. So when I think about testosterone, I think about, like, if you want to feel resilient and strong, like, that's your hormone.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, women somehow forget that they also have testosterone, 1/10 the level of men, but still it's important
and 4 times more than estrogen. It's the most biologically active hormone in a woman's body. It's how we feel vibrant and alive. It's how your brain is firing, how you feel sharp. Like, that's testosterone.
Amen. And I'm sure you saw the meta-analysis recently that came out that found that women who implemented HRT close to the onset of menopause
within 5 years,
within 5 years had a super significant. It was like 32%.
32%.
Yeah, 32%.
It is insane. Like, how is that not everywhere? How are we not touting that?
Risk reduction for Alzheimer's disease, dementia. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And we're seeing that almost similar number of risk reduction for cardiovascular disease as well. We're seeing that similar risk reduction for osteoporosis. We're seeing a more significant risk reduction for things like UTIs and incontinence and, general urinary symptoms of menopause, vaginal atrophy, painful intercourse. And, that's significantly higher.
Yeah. And so we're not just talking about like
whole
long-term health outcomes, but we're talking about quality of life.
We're talking about massive quality of life. And it changes everything, particularly what I want to steer the conversation to, because so often we hear about around the window of menopause, but women are struggling in perimenopause. So I say the time to be having the conversation about hormone replacement therapy is when it's disrupting, your life is being disrupted by your symptoms. And that's usually in women's early to mid 40s. I mean, every woman's going to be different, but it's worth having the conversation to look at the risk and benefits for you.
The question of breast cancer risk always comes up, though.
I know.
How do you respond to that?
Well, it's the Women's Health Initiative that has been debunked, and we know, in further investigation of that, that 20 years, we're looking 20 years later, that estrogen arm, we saw a reduction in all-cause mortality and a reduction in breast cancer. It was really the synthetic progesterone, the progestin, that if you had a villain to call out, it would be that one. But even still, it wasn't significant. It wasn't statistically significant enough to to have warranted the barrage of villainization of these hormones. Like it's heartbreaking to know that we have well over 1 to 2 generations of women that were denied hormone replacement therapy because of kind of the media screaming that HRT caused breast cancer. When
should women though do when bringing this up to their doctor? I mean, obviously, if they have a history of breast cancer in their family, hormone-sensitive breast cancer, I guess specifically.
Yeah, and that's what's the tricky thing about hormone-sensitive breast cancer is that, again, this is a quality of life conversation. And so if a woman is struggling with a lot of quality of life issues, we know that on the back end of breast cancer, women are dying mostly of cardiovascular disease. And same thing as, on the back end of maybe cognitive decline, we still see cardiovascular disease as the number one killer of women. And if we can prevent that, even on the back end of, breast cancer treatment, as long as you've got buy-in from your doctors, I say yes. Like, especially if we're talking vaginal estrogen, which we know is more like skincare than it's not systemic. It's not going to show any meaningful levels in a blood test. And so if we can avoid, UTIs and vaginal dryness or atrophy, like that is significantly improving a woman's quality of life. So I think it's about, every woman, we have to look at that risk-benefit analysis, especially if they've had estrogen-positive breast cancer. But at least with, vaginal estrogen, I don't see why it's not something that we're considering significantly.
Yeah. I mean, when I've posted about HRT and I've had guests on the podcast recently who have talked about it in a favorable light, and I've shared it on social media. Like I was really surprised by the amount of comments that I would get that, it's unnatural it's like nature wants to run its course. Why are we, unnaturally intervening and giving hormones? Isn't there a more natural, holistic way to do it? And I'm like, you can't
Not that prevents disease,
Yeah.
I mean, I think every woman gets to have the choice, but it's important that they have the information. Right? They have the information, they have the informed consent to decide what they want to do for their bodies. But the research is becoming very clear, very evident, including the meta-analysis that you talked about. We know now that HRT is preventing osteoporosis. It is helping to reduce cognitive decline. It's helping to reduce, insulin resistance and cardiovascular disease. I mean, these shape a woman's life in their 60s and beyond. And if we can mitigate that, if we can shove back these chronic conditions and we can increase a woman's quality of life, this needs to be a more important conversation that we're having with our clinicians. Now that the black box warning is being lifted on estrogen medications, which is such a win, and we're shifting the guidance around hormone replacement therapy, more clinicians are going to feel confident and safer recommending and prescribing these hormones to women, their patients. And I think women are going to feel more confident that they can have the conversation with their providers. And so I think it's going to take another 3 to 10 years before we really begin to see that shift. But it's conversations like this with you, Max, that really helps women advocate for themselves when they're struggling and when they don't feel like themselves anymore.
Hell yeah. I mean, we got to get off this moralistic, naturalistic high horse.
I have no desire to be natural. And we could argue, I mean, it's such a faulty argument. There's so many things that happen naturally, like, having frozen shoulder or having, your eyes start to get blurry. You're having to need glasses. I mean, no one's going natural on any of those. Right. So why would we go natural on hormones when the evidence is clear? And I will tell you, when I see my patients get on hormone replacement therapy, it is like a light bulb moment where they finally feel like themselves again. And I have had women who have, gotten promotions, who started careers, who are training for marathons, who are lifting in the gym, who are just living a higher quality of life because finally they feel motivated. They've got the energy, they have capacity, they're sleeping better. Like alone, if I can just get you to sleep better because of oral micronized progesterone, we are winning the game of life.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, the moment any guy stops feeling horny, they get on TRT and
easy. It's not even a conversation. It's an over $2 billion industry.
Exactly. TRT. Erections aren't what they were back in their 20s. We start popping, Cialis, which by the way, Cialis might have really positive benefits for both men and women for long-term health. But it's like, yeah, men don't seem to have a problem or any, bear the brunt of any stigma.
No.
When,
I mean, the medical system was built, the model is built around men. And I think that there's this prevailing narrative that women just tough it out, that we are stoic, that we just suck it up and we just plow through. And women do not deserve to suffer. And so I think until that narrative begins to shift as well, women and clinicians alike, I think they just feel like, hey, that's how women feel. It's what women go through. It's what women endure. And it's so much further from the truth.
Yeah. Amen. So you've got this amazing book, The Perimenopause Revolution, which includes a 5-week midlife reset plan. Very exciting stuff. What else do you think people need to know about
with the book?
Your work, the book? Yeah.
Well, I think it's important, and I talk about this in the 5-week reset program, is the mindset shift that you get to decide. Like, this doesn't have to be your grandmother's menopause or your mama's menopause. Like, this is a moment of decision. I always call perimenopause the reckoning, but also a time of discernment. It's a window of opportunity where you get to say, you know what? I'm establishing boundaries. I am prioritizing me, and I am going to step into this chapter where the narrative has been I'm on this slow decline. But what if I step into this chapter with resilience, with strength and capacity, like on my terms? And that's exactly what this book is all about, is like, how do I get clear about what I want, about who I want to become, and what do I want to accomplish in the second half of my life? Because you are standing on your hard-earned lessons and your hard-won successes. And no one can take that from you. But I will tell you, when you step into that second half of your life with good resilience, good metabolic health, some hormone replacement therapy, women are unstoppable.
Women are unstoppable.
And that's what I want women to get out of this, that this is not a slow decline. This is not the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of you. More revitalized, more energized, and more in the realm of prioritizing you more than ever before.
Hear, hear. I'm inspired.
Let's do it.
I feel pumped to go through it, which I never will. But, who knows? It is 2025. If I wanted to. Who knows? Somebody.
Or you may have a partner who's going through it. So
yeah,
just
there you go. There
you
go. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I got one last question for you, but before we get to that, where can people pick up your book? Where can they find you on social media? How can they support?
Yeah, the book is everywhere books are sold. If you are like me, I'm an Audible girly, so I listen to everything on audio for the most part because I'm a busy working mom. So it's on Audible. It's everywhere. You can listen to books. You can buy books at local bookstores. And you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Mariza. My podcast is called Energized with Dr. Mariza, and those are the places to come find me.
You're like an Energizer bunny. So cool to get to know you. And I definitely think this is a super important conversation to be had, and very excited for people to get their hands on your book, both men and women. The last question that gets asked to everybody on the show: what does living a genius life mean to you?
Reading. Reading saved my life when I was 12 years old. Reading is the reason why this is book number 9. And I always feel like reading and then imparting that knowledge, whether that is a beautiful story or that is information that you feel has changed your life, like imparting that information to the next person, maybe to your kids, your family, leaving that legacy.
Yeah, paying it forward. Mm-hmm. So important. Well, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
You're the best. Thank you guys for listening. Share this episode with friends, loved ones in your life who may benefit from it, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.